Hello guys, and welcome to a new variety of video that's going to start appearing on my channel from time to time. I don't have a schedule for this yet. I'm not sure how often I'm going to do it, but considering the amount of asks, the amount of questions I get from you guys on a regular basis, I would imagine it's going to be fairly often. This will occasionally be in place of my regular theory. This will occasionally, at least for now, be in place of my regular theory videos, as this will pertain to addressing theory questions. In case you guys are wondering where all my videos have been this week, in case you didn't see the tweet I sent out or the post I made on my Tumblr, the camera that I use for this face-to-face stuff, the really awful one that you guys have been complaining about for a really long time at this point, suddenly stopped focusing. I think it's because I dropped it. I don't know for sure though. I'm not a tech expert. Do things break when you drop them? I can't be sure. But either way, I had to shell out for a new camera and it took this long to arrive. However, it's a pretty freaking good camera and it came as part of a bundle with a bunch of other equipment that I didn't have yet, so I'm pretty happy with it. Long story short, until I relearn how to use this camera, my videos might be a little off, so bear with me on that. In fact, I'm actually kind of half using this video to test a couple of features on the new camera, which is so much better than my old one that it makes me want to weep, and I'm actually quite happy about it, despite the fact that I spent all the money that I had saved up to buy the Nintendo Switch to buy this camera instead. Though to be fair, I probably should have been prioritizing my job over my recreation anyway. I have 10 questions for you guys today. They all come from Tumblr this time. I don't expect that to be necessarily true going forward, but they are all from Tumblr this time. 10 might not be enough. This might be a little shorter than I actually wanted it to be, but I'm going to stick with these 10 because I have looked at them and I have kind of formed partial responses to them already. Also, because this is the first video of its kind, and I kind of just sprung it on you guys, I didn't get to ask anybody except for one person, I think, if I could actually feature their names in this video, so I'm going to black out all of these and just leave all the questions anonymous. If your question did make it into the video, chances are you're going to recognize it, so I don't see it being an issue. And technically speaking, this won't be necessary from now on. This is going to be a one-time thing. That said, let's get into the first question. A month has passed in the show and the diamonds have yet to come to Earth to collect humans despite the fact that they think the cluster could emerge at any second. And the crystal gems have yet to rescue the rubies, who by this point have probably gone insane due to isolation. This is the thing that I hate about the show. It tosses aside plot points and only brings them back when it's convenient, and it makes Steven out of character. The Steven I know would try to rescue the rubies immediately after Bubbled. Alright, so there's a couple of questions implied in here. Mainly, what are my thoughts on the diamonds taking so long to arrive and the crystal gems taking so long to get the rubies? Also, do I think that the rubies are going to be okay after having spent so much time in space? And do I think that Steven is out of character for not insisting that they go get them earlier? Let's actually answer those last two first. I mean, yeah, the rubies are kind of like collective gems. They tend to stay grouped together all the time. And we don't really know how much time there was between Bubbled and Adventures in Light Distortion, so we don't know how long they had been out there initially. But gems also perceive time very differently than humans do. Pearl, who has been on Earth and living amongst humans more or less for thousands of years now, still thinks of a few thousand years as being the equivalent to about 13 years from a human perspective. While I'm sure the rubies are concerned about their situation, the amount of time that they've spent out there has been, I'm sure, the least of their worries. Because from their perspective, not a whole lot of time has passed. And I'm not saying that it's because of this that I don't think Steven is necessarily out of character for not insisting they go get them immediately. But you gotta remember, right after Bubbled, Steven had a lot on his mind. There were some episodes in there where you would think it would probably pop into his head that the rubies are still out there and that they shouldn't leave them there. But for the most part, he's been dealing with some really heavy stuff that would undoubtedly distract him from all of that. Until he actually saw the rubies again, at which point he did say that he wanted to bring them back. Now, I do have a problem with the amount of time that's passed since Steven and the crystal gems have gotten back. I feel like the whole 3-week time jump at the end of Hernândez was just kind of silly. I don't see how it affected the narrative of that episode to include that. And it does seem to present a bit of a plot hole. Unless the crystal gems went and got the rubies at some point during that 3-week time jump and we just haven't seen it happen yet, that is much longer than I would have expected Steven to allow them to leave the rubies out there. That is absolutely out of character. As for the diamonds though, and them taking so long to get to Earth, again, yeah, they expect the cluster could hatch at any time, but they are still gems. They still perceive time differently than us, so it isn't going to seem as urgent from their perspective. The cluster hatching soon to a gem could mean sometime in the next couple of centuries. I don't think they're going to take that long to get here, but we also don't know how much they have to prepare for whatever it is that they specifically planned to do. 3 weeks is a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think it's entirely unreasonable. Now, I will admit I'm right there with you when it comes to feeling sometimes that the show tosses aside plot points and brings them up at random times. From what I understand, the crew has been instructed to kind of create the episodes so they can fit in virtually any order with a few notable exceptions. That might have something to do with it. I almost kind of wish that Rhian had been aired before the most recent Steven bomb. Airing it in that order wouldn't have really impacted Steven's character growth that much, and that 3 weeks would have passed before we saw that the diamonds intended to come to Earth. It would have just worked out a little bit better. That's how I would have aired it, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's that much of an issue. Next, we have a question about the Bloodstone leak that Cartoon Network sent out. They're calling it a leak. It wasn't really a leak. Leading up to Rhian. Do you think that the gem leak was a hype tactic by Cartoon Network, knowing that Rhian episodes don't do well? Absolutely. I don't think it's entirely because Rhian episodes don't do well, but I do think it was a hype tactic. I think more specifically, it was a hype tactic that they used because they haven't been properly advertising these new episodes. From a business standpoint, Cartoon Network absolutely made a mistake when they aired the Steven bomb so early compared to its actual air date. Members of the fandom were, for a couple of weeks there after the Steven bomb ended, unaware that there were going to be weekly episodes. Because of that, the most recent few episodes have been low in ratings compared to previous episodes, and that probably got Cartoon Network worried. Hence, they decided to send out a hype tactic advertisement to pump people up for the new episode and get more people to watch it. That in and of itself makes sense. Everything leading up to them having to do it doesn't. Here's one regarding the most recent Steven bomb. I personally think they should have put off the whole plot about the diamonds covered in the last Steven bomb. I like the episodes, but I think it would have been more interesting to have the diamonds and what they mean to other gems, i.e. lapis, pearl, garnet, etc., before having them on screen a lot. I think it's cool that behind closed doors they're grieving, but I think it would have been more powerful with a little more build-up, rather than have all our preconceived notions about them shattered. First off, I want to start off by saying I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but this is something that I'm actually going to talk about a little bit in the upcoming review of Tiger Philanthropist. It's fine to criticize the show when you feel like it's not doing something that it logically should, but you shouldn't criticize the show for not living up to your preconceived notions of a character that we literally knew nothing about. Again, I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this, but this discourse that people are having over the portrayal of the diamonds is the same discourse that people are having over the portrayal of Lapis after she was absent from the show for so long. People build up these headcanons about who these characters were, and they were let down when the characters didn't turn out to match their headcanons, which was something that Tiger Philanthropist was about. I personally wasn't bothered by how the diamonds were portrayed over the Steven bomb. And while I think it definitely could have worked, and maybe it would have worked better if us seeing a lot of them had been put off longer so we could learn more about them from the other characters first, I still do like the idea of having some baseline for what to think about them going forward when we hear about what other characters think of them. Now that we've seen them, the crew won't have any hang-ups giving us episodes with the other characters talking about the diamonds, about what they think and feel in regards to the diamonds. Yes, some of the mystery is gone, but they're still brand new characters. We only have a baseline for the kinds of personalities that they have, and I'm sure we're still going to learn a lot more about them one way or another. So maybe you're right, maybe it would have been better if they had built it up longer, if they had built up the true personalities of the diamonds first. And I think this way is going to work out just fine. Here's one on the Bloodstone reveal again. So browsing through Tumblr, people are, let's say, upset with Cartoon Network about Rhian, and I have a few things to say too, to the fandom. Do you think people should be mad about this episode? Yes, I do. Yeah, Cartoon Network posted a picture of a gem that wasn't really making an appearance, but one look at the title was almost obvious that not only was this a Rhian episode, but it was titled Rhian, like if he was making a gem sona. This goes back to what I was saying before. Yes, a lot of people were able to accurately predict once they saw that gem reveal that it was going to be a gem sona of Hernândez, but that doesn't change the fact that it was a dirty tactic on Cartoon Network's fault that they only had to go through with in the first place to fix their own mistake. That's why I'm upset about it. I'm not upset that they teased us with a gem that we didn't actually get to see. I'm upset that they had the need to tease us with a gem that we didn't end up getting to see. Next, what I believe to be the fandom's fault is their weird hate for Cartoon Network. The way I see it is that it's Cartoon Network's job to hype up the episodes. Maybe it's a little sideways or clickbaity, as fandom is calling it, but nonetheless, their job. They have to advertise their product in order to gain more profit. People are getting too mad at Cartoon Network about this, and I find it entirely stupid. There's a point between criticizing and whining, and I think the fandom is crossing it. I know in your eyes Hernândez is not entirely the best character, but come on. Do you think this is worth it? Well, you said it yourself. It's their job to advertise the episodes. That's absolutely true. But they haven't been. That's why they had to rush and release this clickbaity ad. And it is clickbait. By definition, it is clickbait because we didn't see a bloodstone gem in this episode. They had to rush and release this clickbaity ad because people didn't know the episode was going to air, and that's their fault for not advertising it. But as for the way that the fandom is reacting as a whole, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are taking it too far and overreacting about this. You cut me a little too much slack here where you say that I don't think that Ronaldo is the best character. I think he's the worst character in the show. In terms of his arc and characterization, I think he's the worst character in the show. But I will agree with you, some fans are just getting a little too, I don't want to use the word whiny, let's say overzealous in their criticism of this advertisement. And while that is certainly not worth it and could be harmful in the long run, criticism of this advertising tactic is absolutely worth it. Because that's the only way that the fandom and the other fandoms of Cartoon Network's other genuinely good shows are ever going to get them to start respecting those shows over the filler shows like Teen Titans Go. This next one's in 3 parts regarding why we've never seen any real indication of religion in Steven Universe, primarily religious holidays. I also want to know why we don't see those holidays, but I doubt the crew will go there. Depicting religion of any kind is a big no-no for cartoons these days. The last cartoon that had the balls to do that was Avatar: The Last Airbender. I personally don't think it's weird that they don't go into detail portraying religion in Steven Universe. That's not what I find unusual. I find it unusual that despite some semi-canon sources, primarily Ronaldo's real-life blog, have suggested that real-world religions do exist in Steven's world, we haven't seen any indication that anyone in Steven's world celebrates the holidays most closely associated with them, and members of the crew have said that those holidays are not celebrated in Steven's world. That's what I find unusual. I want to know because it has also been said by the crew that the only thing different between Steven's history and ours is that the gems came to his Earth. I want to know what the gems coming to Steven's Earth have to do with those holidays not being celebrated. I have some ideas on that, but that's what I find interesting about it, not that they don't show people practicing religion in detail. And I'm pretty sure that's what most people are curious about too. Okay, so this is one person that I actually told I was going to be using their asks for this, but I didn't actually ask them if I could show their name in the video. Probably should have, but I didn't, so I'm going to black this one out too. Hey, remember back in Indirect Kiss where Connie swallowed some of Steven's spit and her eyes were better? I'm bad at explaining stuff like this, but there was a theory that I have no idea if I made it up or saw it somewhere where when she swallowed it, she kind of gained something from Steven, and that's why she confused with him. I could go more in depth with this when I can explain, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's the reason I don't like the idea of Steven fusing with other humans. Okay, let me break this down for you, and keep in mind I don't have any evidence from my point of view on this, since Alone Together does very soundly take place after Indirect Kiss, but I just don't see this as the direction that the crew is going with Steven's ability to fuse. All the way back in Bubble Buddies, before it was a likely future for Steven to have that indirect kiss with Connie, Garnet was sure that he could fuse, which tells me that she used her future vision to look into his likely possible futures to see that in at least one of them, he did manage to fuse with someone, indicating that he can fuse in all possible futures. Not that he will, mind you, but that he can. Now granted, she could have just foreseen him fusing with one of the gems, not with a human, but she also didn't seem surprised when Stevonnie walked through that door. She seemed, validated, excited and validated. So again, no real evidence, it's just circumstantial stuff and the way I feel the story is going. But that's it. That and the fact that gems have never been shown to be able to pass on an ability permanently to someone else. The closest we've seen is Garnet giving her future vision to Steven for very short periods of time, but Connie doesn't even have a gem to sustain one of Steven's powers. Everything that the gems can do that humans can't requires energy that humans don't have the capacity to draw upon, biologically speaking. And I know it's a show and they can make up whatever rules they want, but it just doesn't make sense to me that Steven would be able to unknowingly pass some ability on to another human being permanently through a power that we've seen do completely different things than that, if that makes any sense. Here's one about Steven's genealogy. It's sad to know that Steven's powers will eventually fade as the generations continue after him and Connie presumably have kids. How do we know they will? For all we know, gem abilities could be incredibly dominant traits. And yeah, just through random chance, some of their descendants wouldn't get any, but the vast majority of them might and continue to pass them on for a very long time. I mean, yeah, I know you said they would eventually fade, but for all we know, they could persist a lot longer than you seem to be thinking here. Here's a long question that's going to be pretty simple to answer. So I was wondering about all those bubbled rose quartz gems. Is it possible that they were bubbled because they were simply rose quartz gems and not anything else? Like they were rounded up and then poofed because of what they were, even if they didn't rebel against the Diamond Authority, all because our rose quartz shattered pink diamond? Because that would be messed up. I mean, none of the amethysts or jaspers were bubbled. Or am I wrong and it was only crystal gems that were bubbled? The Diamonds flat out said that they were poofed and bubbled because of what Rose did, not because they were associated with her. So that answers your question right there. The reason that I actually picked this one is because I want to be clear. A lot of people are misreading this, but the shocking thing that Rose did that got all those other rose quartz bubbled wasn't shattering Pink Diamond, it was rebelling. There'd never been a rebellion in gem history up to that point. At least not in the history of gem culture as it existed at that time. So a rose quartz rebelling against her diamond was seen as so inconceivable that the entire line had to be discontinued until the diamonds could, at some future time, if it was possible to do so, determine that those rose quartz weren't also going to rebel. And it had nothing to do with what they did personally, and it definitely happened before Pink Diamond was shattered. Because it's alluded to very strongly that after she was shattered, the other diamonds wanted those rose quartz shattered, but that blue protected them. Here's another one about poofed gems. Are gems conscious while poofed? I feel like there's some conflicting information, as we've heard Garnet talk about how Pearl thinks about her form when she reforms, and yet when Peridot reformed after being poofed and bubbled, she seemed to have been in stasis where she wasn't conscious. I'm not sure how this can be explained. Well, it can be explained by the one variable between the two situations. The bubble. Garnet herself in one episode says that the bubble keeps them safe in stasis. So a gem that is just poofed is still conscious, but a gem that is poofed and then stored in a bubble is not. Here's another one from the same Tumblr user. I've got a theory brewing now, going off of your idea that Steven is an empath. I'm starting to think that Pink Diamond may have indirectly led to her own demise. Perhaps all rose quartzes were given empathy powers like Steven's, and because of it, Rose was able to empathize with humans, and that overcame her sense of duty to the diamonds. In other words, I believe Pink Diamond, a young diamond as she only had one colony, designed a cut of gems empathic enough to lose loyalty to the Gempire. Well, first of all, it's not my idea that Steven has empathic powers. It's the show's idea. It's been shown multiple times. He has psychic empathy. That's what the show's been showing him doing, is using literal psychic empathy, the literal power to connect with someone by sensing their actual emotional states. As for the rest of that, it's not a bad theory. We don't ever get any indication that any other rose quartz rebelled, but I don't think that's necessarily a wrench in this particular theory. The only hang-up I really have with this is the fact that Rose didn't seem capable of empathizing with humans. From her interactions with Greg and We Need to Talk, it really seemed like she couldn't empathize with anybody. If she had the power to literally feel what other people are feeling, I think she probably would have realized at some point over the last however many thousand years they've known each other that Pearl was in love with her, and it doesn't seem like she ever did. It's possible that she was, I just don't see any direct evidence of it yet, which means that if she didn't have that power, this is a new power that Steven has developed entirely on his own because of his unique biology, which I think is pretty exciting in and of itself. And I didn't even realize it, but that's actually all the questions I had. And I've been recording for a lot longer than I thought I would have been at this point. Maybe 10 was too many questions, or maybe I just talked too much. Who can really say? As of right now, I do plan to do more of these, as I said before. I don't have an actual legitimate method for people to submit questions that they specifically want included in these videos. I do intend to get that going at some point. I'm just not sure how. If anybody has a suggestion, I'd be happy to hear it. Keep in mind, I don't typically answer messages on Tumblr, only asks. I don't even really know how to use Twitter, but I guess I could learn. But really, what I'd like to find is just a dedicated Dropbox where people could post questions that they want to see in these videos, along with whether or not they're okay with their names being included in the video itself, or if they want to remain anonymous. And that's it. I don't want to use it for anything but that. In the meantime, though, if you do have a question that you'd like to be featured in a video like this one, you can leave it as an ask on my Tumblr page. As far as I know, you don't have to have a Tumblr account of your own to leave an anonymous ask in someone's inbox. Just keep in mind, if you do leave an ask that you want featured in one of these videos, you have to tell me that somewhere in the ask, and that if you do want your name featured with the question, I will need to know that, or else I will treat it as an anonymous question. That said, guys, what are your thoughts on this new video format, on any of the questions that were featured in this video? What's your take on my answers for them, on the questions themselves? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Also, let me know if you'd like to see a live streamed version of this at some point. That's also a possibility. Either way, though, guys, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.